Blizzard recently announced that on the TBC PTR development notes that they are planning to release Tier 4 content in its post-nerf state. However, they recognize some of the community's desire for more challenging content, and they want to continue the discussion of what they mean for Tier 5 and even possibly going into Tier 6. So I've seen a lot of other content creators talking about this pre-nerf versus post-nerf, and I also wanted to put my 2 cents in. But let me start off by saying that everyone has to realize that this is the 3rd iteration of TBC. This isn't like we're going into some new MMO, and at the same time, this also isn't, classic WoW back in the day. It even wasn't 2019's classic WoW, which in my opinion had a lot more of a player base than Anniversary currently does. And it also, 2019 didn't even have a lot of the economic problems that we have in Anniversary. And the reason why I say that is that how it relates to pre-nerf versus post-nerf is that you have to look at the player base first. And that because we have such a lower dip in the player base compared to 2019 and even OG Vanilla WoW going into TBC, my opinion is that Tier 4 content, obviously, even if it was in its pre-nerf state, is not that difficult. But going into Tier 5 and Tier 6, you did have guilds that were struggling for weeks on end just to clear final bosses. And since there is a dip in the player base, you have to understand that less players means less raids. So also means less opportunity to clear that content. So I think going forward, if Blizzard is going to have to choose one, whether it's pre-nerf or post-nerf, I think you should just say, hey, going into Tier 5, going into Tier 6, it needs to be in a post-nerf state. Because you do have a lot of casual gamers, and even in my other videos, you have players that don't even have the time to farm all week and get ready for raids. But you also have that small percentage of the player base, and the term elitist gets thrown around, where they want to do that speed running, parse oriented, I want this pre-nerf challenge so my guild can knock it out of the park. And yes, I understand that. And that's why I think SOD also did it in a good way. And even looking into, for example, I talked about this in a previous video, where when you go into Wrath, like ICC, and even Trial of the Crusader, you have the option to turn on heroic difficulty. So I think another option that Blizzard has to look at is that when it does come to post-nerf or pre-nerf, I think if there are guilds out there that want to do that elitist type, speedrunning, parse-oriented type of content, maybe add something in like they did with SOD, where you can toggle it on and, hey, my guild can do this challenging content, and if I do this challenging content, then yes, I get more of a reward, while also having more of a casual, friendly type of raiding atmosphere. So if players want to go in and just do post-nerf state content, then yeah, they can be more than willing to do that. But when it does come to TBC, we are going to see the hype wave. And just like in Vanilla Anniversary, we're going to see the same thing happen in TBC, where we saw the player base at launch of Anniversary ride the hype wave all the way to BWL, and then Zul'Gurub and AQ came around, and that's where the majority of the player base quit. We're going to see something similar, where in TBC, Karazhan's going to be great, SSC and Tempest Keep are going to be great, Black Temple and Hygel are going to be awesome, and then Zalaman is going to roll around, and you're going to see a dip in the player base. You're also going to see a dip in the player base with guilds that aren't able to clear content in Black Temple and Hygel. And I would like to say that when it does come to this pre-nerf versus post-nerf, that the elitist mindset of classic WoW is a small percentage of the raiding community that likes to go and be like, hey, I'm gonna go for this 99 parse or compete for a legendary 100. And yeah, that's fine. However, if you do release raids in their pre-nerf state, it only benefits that elitist culture of classic WoW. And Right now, the majority of the player base, which is the casual dad gamer, is forced to suffer in that raid state, because you're going to see guilds that have that casual makeup. They're going to suffer through weeks of prog, and their guilds are potentially going to disband. I have seen it firsthand. I literally, in Anniversary, you know, we got to Nax. I progged on 4 horsemen for weeks on end, and we got worse every week. And because the player base was already low from players quitting in AQ, it was hard for the leadership to find refined, well-playing players that knew how to clear that type of content. And that's the problem you're going to see in TBC with a pre-nerf state, is that it's going to be too hard for players. They're going to quit, and it's going to be hard for guilds to find replacements. So overall, I think post-nerf is the best way to release it. And I also want to reiterate this. I can't say it enough for the millionth fucking time, that we are going into TBC for the 3rd time. There's so much knowledge. There's so many videos. There's so many tier lists, that there is a meta. And when it comes to this meta, you know, you have guild leadership that are forming new guilds in TBC, or even guilds that are coming from Vanilla Anniversary into TBC with all this knowledge, that are forming raid comps and their rosters around this meta. And Blizzard sees this. Blizzard sees the guilds that are coming into TBC and their player base with all this knowledge, and they're like, hey, maybe we should just give them all pre-nerf state rating with no changes. But the problem is that the majority of the player base, regardless of how knowledgeable they are all casual dad gamers, the majority of them. And like I said, not a lot of players have all the time in the world to spend on their computer playing WoW all week. They just want to raid log or pug. That's just the way that it is. That's the way that the player base is right now. So my opinion overall is just give TBC rating post-nerf state. If they do want to go a route like giving a raid difficulty toggle, that's great too. Give the elitists something to be more challenging, while also tuning it down, giving the casual player base a little bit more of leeway so they can clear content too. That is my 2 cents when it comes to this topic. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Got a single frost vulnerability. Holy.
I got 99.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Nice. Mana igniting cord. That's this for me.